Welcome to today's webinar on unifying public involvement and really the opportunity to really share notes and real-world applications of organizations that are streamlining their public involvement process and accelerating their project deliveries through technology and better data management. My name is Graham Stone, the VP of Government Relationships here at publicinput.com. I'm excited to serve as sort of the MC for today, and we're going to, like I said, focus on some of the stories from peers, both at the North Carolina Turnpike Authority, representatives of RSNH and HNTB who are acting as representatives for that group, and also North Carolina Department of Transportation itself, as well as the Utah DOT. And those stories, I think, will probably all center around some of the nuanced balance that we really have to work on between robust and equitable public involvement practices, but also the need to implement effective solutions to the transportation challenges that are growing more and more important by the day. But I think we want to start off with some framework that I think everybody can really relate to in this room, especially. You know, the idea that a project would be delayed, you know, is not new to us. And really, if you break it down, there's kind of two different buckets. You know, one is sort of the design and construction side of the project, and those delays can be for a wide range of reasons. Some of which in our control, others definitely not. But what we also know is that we can set ourselves up for success and a smoother process if we engage the public early and often as a best practice. You know, in planning for this presentation, some of the folks that you'll hear from in a minute discussed specific reasons that they've seen projects get off track when it comes to the public involvement or the early phases of those projects, and you know, those range from, you know, anything as broad as just a lack of a tailored and comprehensive approach for a specific community that a project was taking place in, you know, where a canned process fell short of reaching that community and then they had to backtrack, as well as, you know, more serious aspects like environmental lawsuits that may come up, you know, stemming from a design that took place without a solid relationship in the community, and of course even politics. I think that's something that plays into a lot of the decision making that we as designers, engineers, public involvement professionals are trying to make sure we get ahead of, but there's always that opportunity. I wanted to take a moment. You know, this is not new, right? There's nothing that we're talking about is groundbreaking yet. We're all aware of the reasons that projects are delayed, and it's really important to make note of the work that FHWA is doing to bring us together through the Everyday Counts initiatives. You know, over the last, at this point, I realize it's almost been 10 years since EDC 1. So the last administration and even the current one see the need for improving this process and have really helped us come up with, actually I was doing the numbers, there's over 50 different innovations that have been brought to us as a result of these over the years. They include, you know, the planning and environmental linkages, implementing quality environmental docs, is, you know, the standard of telling the story and keeping the documents brief, but still meeting those legal standards, or even locally administered federal aid projects. So the stakeholder coordination that's necessary for that, and of course, you know, the VPI, the virtual public involvement initiatives. All of those are important, but one of the things that we realize is that they all kind of have a common denominator in that they need to have, in order to be delivered, aligned data standards. You know, a way to share, a way to communicate, and a way to collaborate with our peers across projects, across departments, and of course across agencies from the local level and up. And so that's an important thing to make note, and it's something that we're going to come back to continually. But Hunter, if you want to Hunter, advance the slide one more for me, I think it's great to talk about the efforts and the progress we've made, but it is something I want to point out. You know, we still have some work to do. In our own experience, and of course working with transportation planners across the country, we've kind of hit on three primary opportunities that can slow project delivery. And those three include disconnected data as a result of, those different tools for every tactic. In every project, there's at least 2 or 3 different handoffs for the process or the phase that we're in, and communication gaps that lead to delays in those. And then, of course, ensuring that we are complying with mandates and protecting ourselves from potential lawsuits to really make sure that we've got all the I's dotted and the T's crossed. But if you look at if you advance the slide for me, Hunter, that isn't to say do less, right? We know researchers since 2005, I think, was one of the earlier studies that came out. Researchers have seen that when you have a narrow communications approach and you sort of a singular channel, you end up with inherently biased results. So the papers that were published back then said that if you look at phone surveys as an example, right, the decline of response rates in those, was hinting at a broader problem. So we did something about it, right? And participation numbers are much higher thanks to online engagement, virtual public involvement tactics. But we want to make sure that we don't associate more people, meaning more equity. So we want to ensure that we are using mixed mode engagement tactics and focusing on collecting input via a broad variety of channels. And people who want to participate online, people who participate in person, over social media, a variety of ways to gather that information in order to make sure we're reaching the most representative audience while still lowering that bias that can come from having those narrow opportunities for engagement. So if you one more slide for me, Hunter. We know that this is difficult. We know that this is a challenge. So that's where we as public input really try to plug into this process. And if you look on the next slide, the way that we are helping in trying to solve this problem is bringing that all together. We know that there's a wide variety of opportunity to participate. We know there's a wide variety of challenges in coordinating that information. And so I'm proud to be able to say that, with the technology available today, we're working on the solution to help streamline that process, apply the technology to create efficient and equitable but consistent project delivery. But with that, I do really want to get to the meat of this program and hand it off to some of our presenters. If you take a look at this slide, we're going to hear from Diane Wilson, who is a wonderful partner of ours. And if I'm being honest, we've learned so much from working with her and her personal on-the-ground experience. Also, Radha Swayampakula and Logan Hodges, both consultants working as representatives of the Tollway Authority here in North Carolina. And I think we're going to start off first with Radha and Logan to talk a little bit about a specific project around the Charlotte metropolitan area. Like I mentioned, Radha and Logan are both working as representatives of the North Carolina Tollway, really tackling some things that I think we can all relate to with regards to a project that is going to be inherently controversial. There's a lot of people that have a lot of opinions. So managing that, keeping the process smooth and consistent is what they're going to focus on. So with that, I'll hand it over to both of you. And thanks so much for being here today and sharing your story. It really means a lot to us to have the opportunity to listen and learn from your experiences.
Thank you, Graham. This is Radha Swayampakula. Graham is right that we're going to talk about a project, I-485 Express Lanes, that could have been a very controversial project, but we had a lot of tools that we had access to and very strong team that really helped us to really change that potential perception and really, end of the day, delivered a very successful project for the department here in North Carolina. Currently, this project is under construction. So I'll give you a brief overview of the project, and we will talk about the background and the past public involvement efforts and why we actually needed to look at a comprehensive community engagement, especially in the middle of the project planning process. And what are the different tools we looked at and how those tools help us to achieve and meet the project schedule. And finally, we'll wrap up with a few takeaways. Both Logan and I will co-present some slides. We both will talk. Some will just individually talk, but I'll have Logan give his perception here.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Logan Hodges, and I kind of have the unique opportunity to operate as an extension of the North Carolina Turnpike Authority staff, an embedded consultant. So our world revolves around tolling here in North Carolina. And, you know, as I'm sure you can all relate, no one wants to pay more for anything if they don't have to. So sometimes our projects are met with initial hesitation from communities and an initial challenge for us. And so we get to educate those communities. And many times when we do, and we inform them of the fact that they have empowered decisions and they're able to make better decisions for their transportation options. You know, communities tend to embrace these projects, and it alleviates a lot of the congestion and things that can hurt communities the most, and that's transportation. So we get that unique opportunity.
Okay, so here's a map of Charlotte metro area. This is Charlotte, North Carolina, a community that, our metro region, that's the largest in the state, and with over 2 million population. Some of you may be familiar with this area or may very well be from this area. This area is growing. This area attracts over 100 residents every day, and it just continues to grow day after the day, year after the year. The specific segment of the project we are talking about is 485 on the south side of the city, highlighted in blue. The actual 485 is a loop that goes around the entire Charlotte. And South Charlotte is even a more rapidly growing, both in terms of residents and businesses and employment. This corridor is very congested with over 150,000 vehicles traveling a day on certain segments of the corridor. And if you see on the bottom right of the map, that's a Monroe Expressway. That's the first toll facility in this area of the state. However, when we started the project, that did not exist. So this 485 was one of the first express lane facility that was in planning and design when we originally were working on the project. The other gray facilities that you see, those are other express lane facilities. Some have been open since then, and some are still in planning and hopefully soon go into construction.
So from a communication perspective, as Graham alluded to and Radha, we started out of the gate with a few unique challenges. The only open tolled facility at the time of some of our initial public meetings was in Raleigh, North Carolina, and that had been open for a few years. So we had an entire North Carolina's largest population that knew very little about tolling and what this means. What they did know was primarily negative. The state's first P3 contract was underway and in negotiations for the I-77 express lanes. So what Charlotte residents did know was very negative, was disjointed with the Department of Transportation, and there were a lot of different messages. So everyone had a differing opinion depending on where you lived in this region. So we definitely had some work to do, and we learned a lot from this process.
So the project planning originally started in late 2013, and as we moved into 2015, we had our very first public meeting. At this meeting, we presented the study area and proposed typical sections and lane configurations and things like that. Diane can also echo this. She was part of this process and pretty much starting at the beginning of this project. Just like any other typical project, we followed NCDOT or typical, rather traditional DOT outreach methods for this project that yielded about 80 people attending the project. By no means 80 is a terrible number, but looking at how many newsletters we sent out and how broad the project community area is, we knew we can do better. And even more than that, as we go into the final designs and construction, we knew that we have to do better and we have to figure out ways to bring community and public to our meetings and have their engagement and have their feedback. So the project went on a brief hold in 2016-2017 timeframe. So after the hold, as the project picked up momentum and the planning work and the design work have begun again, late 2017, early 2018. So at the time, we wanted to step back, and we wanted to step back and have a comprehensive look at all the community tools, community engagement tools rather, that we have at our disposal, and really figure out what can be used for future.
And as that project continued through project delivery, the needs change, not only for where the project stands in that delivery timeline, but also the needs of the community changes. Technology changes, ways to reach communities advances, and we have to keep up with those changes. We have a responsibility to the community to engage with them in every way possible. And so we kind of want to break down a few of those tools that we saw that were successful in that effort. This slide is kind of an overview of all of our efforts and how they performed over the months that we were really heavily engaged into the Southern Charlotte metropolitan region. We wanted to build off of the strategy from 2015, and that was our standard, that was our bar. We wanted to beat the status quo of public engagement and public meetings. And as you can see here, every number on here is huge in comparison to 2015. We were able to reach 75,000 people in a city of 2 million. And compared to 2 million, that's not the biggest number, but it was something that we were very proud of. We incorporated geotargeting ads, social media ads, videos, publicinput.com, and of course a plethora of social media platforms. And we were proud of this huge increase from years past.
So one of the primary contributors to the never really before seen success was the tool publicinput.com. Our goal going into this roundup of community engagement was to consolidate all project information in one place and make it easy for our residents. By syncing everything into one place, which is PA.com platform, we were able to understand and educate communities affected, whether they are commuters, residents, or business owners, and effectively and efficiently communicate with them. In this video, you can see that we are trying to scroll down of the publicinput.com page for this project back in 2018. You can see this platform allowed us to have a variety of information, whether it is the project history, the image that you just saw, or the frequently asked questions that we heard all in one place, or the actual comments that we received and all the responses that we provided. By having everything in one place made it very easy for us to tell public or an elected officials, whatever information they're looking at, they just need to go to this one place and all the information is there, and we take the responsibility of keeping it all up to date.
So to reach the maximum number of people, along with traditional outreach methods, we use geotargeting and social media. We were distributing ads on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, Nextdoor, all around where this project was being built. And multiple platforms sounds great in discussion, but when you are collecting public comments, that can become messy when you have up to 5 different platforms of where people are leaving their comments. So we have a responsibility to respond to those. Publicinput.com allowed us to track, engage all of these comments all into one place through this platform. It also gave us some insight into the residents that lived in the area so that we were able to track our communication outreach and change those messages depending on how the community was reacting or contributing to those specific discussions.
Okay, so the slide here is showing the numbers or stats from the 2018 public involvement or community engagement. That is our first round of community engagement after we brought these new tools, innovative tools, to the surface. So you can see this is a glimpse of success we had at this meeting. We had over 300 attendees, of course, compared to the 2015 meetings. That's a huge increase. We also had tremendous success of how many people actually accessed the project website, the Facebook site, and provided comments. Geofencing, also geotagging, helped us to reach many more communities. And the last thing I want to mention on this slide is being so prominent on Facebook or social media really enabled our stakeholders, our local MPO, and the towns in the area to promote and the public meetings, and also really educate their respective constituents about the project and what's happening with respect to the next steps of the project.
So for us, as a team, one of the key takeaways we took when collecting public comments on one online forum that you can control is people can find very creative ways to get around cursing filters and find really fun, inventive ways to cuss us out or to give us a piece of their mind, which was fun and not disheartening at all. So public input, we were able to create some comprehensive reporting for all of our public comments that we collected. Like I mentioned earlier, through their API, we were able to pull in data from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all in one place, so that when we did respond to all 2,000 of these comments, it made it easy, easier. We were able to group comments into related questions so that we could develop one answer that kind of responded to all 100 comments or questions in that group. And it also allowed us the ability to filter out all of those that were just not comment or were not questions at all. They were just cussing us out. So it made the project delivery much simpler than going to all 5 of these different platforms, giving different messages, different teams working on different things. We were able to really consolidate that effort, and it went much smoother and more quickly. So for our community engagement stats for 2019, we had a different mission in 2019. We were no longer looking for public comment. Of course, we were still taking it because we always want feedback. But this was right before construction was scheduled to begin. So we wanted to give the community an opportunity to be able to reach out to the construction teams and meet the people that were going to be on the ground for the next 2 to 3 years. We were also going to be involved in that community for the foreseeable future. So we wanted to give them a face and a name of people that they could reach out to in the months to come.
Okay, so this is our wrap-up slide. And so we have 5 takeaways that we learned from this process that others could use as you're working on similar projects or challenging and potentially controversial projects. So the first one is using multiple tools. Successful project delivery requires using more than one tool. Graham just showed a series of those tools that are available for the disposable for any of us. Whether they're traditional tools or modern ways, all of those should be used. For this specific project, one thing that was very interesting is at both the 2018 public meetings and the 2019 public meetings, we had several people bringing their postcard to the meeting, basically indicating that that is how they heard about the project. But we also had several people attending purely as a result of the geotargeting or the social media promotions by our stakeholders. Again, indicating that multiple tools is a very key.
We also wanted to create one comprehensive database so that we could continue to go back to as these projects change and as we complete one project after another and continue to engage this community that is going to be getting new projects, new polling projects for the foreseeable future. We wanted to create that one-stop shop for us to have that dialogue so we could continue to revisit these communities and keep them up to date on what was going on in their area.
So takeaway number 3 is responsive to comments. Logan said this earlier. This was a huge task, responding to 2,000 comments and responding to every one of those comments and posting a response online. That was a huge undertaking. However, once we finished it, it was a very powerful message that the project team had to tell our partners, local officials, elected officials, that when we say we want feedback, we mean it, and we are serious. We're really serious in gathering feedback. We're really serious making sure everybody gets a response. And what this also helped us is to answer and address some of the misinformation. That was one of the challenges that we would see is a lot of messages would be posted out there that are purely wrong or misinformation. And by responding, it helped us to correct some of those potential issues.
And as we were responding to those comments, we created one central forum for people to revisit over and over again to get the most up-to-date information. Now we're using publicinput.com to post drone footage of 45 construction and posting information on the US 74 express lanes, which are under development now. We were able to create a tool that's going to be able to be used for the next 10 years. So it was worth the investment of time because it paid off for the community, for the project team, and for local municipal groups.
Okay. Our final takeaway is stakeholder ownership. We all involve stakeholders and we always try to engage them and educate them. However, for this project, we tried something different. We really tried to have our stakeholders to take some ownership, whether that is to have them take some responsibility of promoting the upcoming public meeting or take the responsibility of educating their respective constituents. And when I say stakeholders, I'm referring to the local municipalities, towns, MPO, neighborhood associations, homeowners associations. But really bringing all of those together, we addressed exactly what Graham said in the beginning is really have an opportunity to have very often community education, community approach. And that end of the day really helped us to meet or exceed our project schedule, which was the biggest goal for us to going into this process.
Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate, to be honest, the opportunity to build some of the tools that you guys utilized on those efforts, and looking forward to watching that project progress. But I don't want to take up too much time and roll right into Diane Wilson's portion of this presentation. Diane, as I mentioned earlier, is a wonderful partner of ours, and we're lucky to have her down the street from our headquarters office in Raleigh, North Carolina. So we lean on that maybe too often for feedback. But she is the Senior Public Involvement Officer at the North Carolina DOT. And Diana, I will let you take it from here.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here today to be able to provide information on this. As you said, I am a Senior Public Involvement Officer for NCDOT. I've been here over 7 years and worked on projects throughout all phases of development and in all 100 counties. I was checking the other day and I've actually gotten through all of them. Here at NCDOT, we believe that better understanding leads to better participation, which allows for meaningful dialogue, and that in turn leads to better projects for us. To that end, our public involvement group is partnered with our community studies and visualization groups who work with us to identify and provide the best possible opportunities for individuals, the general public, in and out of state to view the most clear information, and after viewing, provide them the opportunity to review that information and provide meaningful input, their thoughts, their reactions to a project. And that in itself has been helped along tremendously by using public input. And we do use several other, depending on the type of project and things, we use other methods, but this has been tremendous for us. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Carolina Bays project, which was a unique opportunity, presented a number of challenges to us. And I'd like to think that because of that and the ability to work and talk with our public input developers has provided some wonderful enhancements to the product, if you will. This is a two-state, 19-mile-long project. It's largely going through unincorporated areas, but not undeveloped areas, and it's adjacent to beaches and resorts in both North and South Carolina. It includes a connection to several coastal towns along the Intercoastal Waterway, such as Myrtle Beach and Charlotte. It contains a large number of wetlands, rivers, and streams, and it contains, as I said, a number of resorts and golf communities. So here's a big challenge right there. So as you can see from this slide, we were able to garner a large number of responses to questions and comments, as well as a large number of subscribers. Interest in this project is high, and it's not just locally. What we went out and presented were 9 conceptual corridors, each with its own set of challenges. But by using the dynamic engagement pages, we were able to provide the opportunity to click on individual corridors and view the route, which showed a 1,000-foot corridor, and for people to provide feedback and comments on each and every corridor. Now, since we were providing these using KMZ files over Google Maps, understanding of the corridor locations was almost instantaneous. People are used to looking at those maps and they say, that's my house, that's Aunt Martha's house. They get the feeling for what we're looking at and the size. So people were able to visualize each corridor, and therefore, as this shows, is this your preferred concept, or is there another comment you'd like to give us? Now, along with providing comments on existing proposed corridors, participants were able to submit a corridor or section they felt would be better and then comment on why. You can see some rather straight green lines on there, and as you know, those are not what we do for transportation corridors, but people told us, you know, don't stop the project here, continue on. So they were able to connect the dots and submit a corridor or section they felt would be better, and then provide the comment on why we needed to consider this corridor over something we had already presented. In this case, for a change, people really said, thank you for providing this type of map and the ability to zoom in and provide understanding, and then the option to comment on each and every one and provide an alternative. That's something we really haven't done before. We have not said, if you don't like these, what do you think? And people love that. They feel like they really are part of the process. When you move into managing that huge number of emails, in this case, we had 541 emails come in. That can be cumbersome. A practice we use is to include a copy of the written comments or faxes or emails when we're creating a comment in public input. Creating the comment from an email, thanks to the team, has become a very simple process. Hover, click on Create the Comment, verify that the name and address and email comes in appropriately, and then click and say that complete that comment, and there you are. Now, then a status button has been added, and you can see that on the screen here with you can create the comment, you can reply, you can mark, you know, all the typical things. But down at the bottom, you'll see, I just have to say I love these. They've made my life so much easier on some other projects this week. You know, you can leave it unassigned. You can say that it needs a reply, which reminds me later so that nothing falls through the cracks. Something that needs attention. Perhaps we've gotten a resolution from a town, or we have someone who is, say he wants to have copies of the DGN files. Okay, I'll set it needs attention, and then I'll let someone on the team know, go in and take a look at that. And provide what we need to that person. And when you get through, get to the green check mark and say, it's done. Downloading all emails has also made documentation easy. When you're compiling items for inclusion in your file, download the emails, saving them in the format that you want, and boom, you're good to go. It's made it so much easier, so much smoother, and so much more efficient than what we were doing before. And in here, by responding to an email with something as simple as a thank you for your input, could be a complex email or maybe information about the next steps, you can let the project handle it for you. Set up that auto reply to emails that said, we received your comment. This is what we're going to do with it. You know, we have a standard response that we like to give to when people reply to comments. They give us an email and we say, thank you for responding. You know, at the end of the comment period, all comments will be taken into consideration as the project is developed and incorporated where feasible. That makes people really feel like you care. It's not just a thank you for your comment, and it automatically does that for you, which is great. We want to use that one email address. In this case, we set it up 3 ways because people sometimes tend to, instead of underscores, they put dashes. We have several different here because people said, oh, I sent it this way and it bounced. All right, we'll set it up in the way that it felt best to them, and that's comments for all 3 of those emails come into the same place. We ran into something that was really interesting, and it did take a little work around, but thank goodness public input was there to help us. And with the back-end data that we get in our reports, we were able to check what's going on. We received emails that were sent to 2 project managers, 2 county clerks, 1 in each state, a county commission in North Carolina, and the project email. Now, stop and think about that for a minute. I send in 1 email to 6 recipients. I get 6 responses, 1 from public input and 5 from the people it went to, those commissioners, the county clerks, the project managers. And they're all slightly different. So now I've gotten back 5 similar but not the same emails. At the same time, the 5 outside people forwarded that response to public input. So now I've gotten 6 emails, 1 from the individual and 5 from the other people. Now, I don't know, when you have 541 actual emails, you know, what is this a duplicate? It's coming from a project manager in South Carolina. So it's an open read. Well, we've just found that it's so much cleaner, and have actually, if you will, sold our project managers on, don't put your email on the handout. Put the public input email. Let us gather those comments, and you'll get a note. We'll put you in as an admin, and you'll get a note saying that there's an email you need to look at. And if you respond, it's right there, and nobody else is going to respond to it. And thank you, don't forward it. It's just been wonderful. You can see how much easier and cleaner, less likelihood something will fall through the cracks if we do this and use the project email. Send a concise, specific response, and then create a comment from the email and tag it so that you've got it in the tag count, just like other comments. It's really going to make life easier. And just as a quick recap, the dynamic pages can be just that. They should be dynamic. Managing and documenting input in any form, whether it's an email, website questions, hard copy, faxes, easy on the back end and the public feels heard. There again, I'll just go back to, everything we do, we try to provide that better understanding, which gets better participation and dialogue with people, which gets us better projects and better press. And with that, I'll wrap mine up short and sweet.
Thanks, Diane. Really, really, really appreciate the thoughts. Oh, you've got another slide in there. Did I interrupt you? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it looks like that was one I was not anticipating, but that leads back to gathering that data, and with your tags, your comments are in there, your emails are now included in there as comments in separate sections. So if you get an email that has 15 different comments, say we asked 10 questions and they answered all 10, highlight, listed under its particular question, being able to break them up and tag them, it's just going to make life much easier.
Yeah, and I completely I think it's worth underscoring what you had said about the standardization of that process. We have so many different entities that are all involved, and those we talked about earlier, the opportunities for that communication gap to create a delay, to create a backup in the process. So going back to some of those common denominators in all those different EDC initiatives, sharing information, communicating efficiently between those projects, departments, agencies, and then ultimately collaborating more efficiently. So I appreciate that. Being a really clear outcome in applying the technology. So thanks. And if you, by the way, anybody that's listening in have any questions, we'll have a couple minutes at the end of Leah's portion. So please feel free to utilize the chat function on your webinar screen. I think it's on the bottom right there. But send those in, and we'll see if we have some time to answer some of those. But without further ado, I do want to introduce Leah Jaramillo. She is the president and also senior project manager for Summers Jaramillo and Associates. Leah has been working, I think it's over 15 years now, she was saying, on various public involvement initiatives. She is actually a CP3 certified practitioner through the IAP2, the International Association of Public Participation. So she lives and breathes this stuff every day, and we're glad to have her as a mentor as well. But Leah, thanks again for being here.
Yeah, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here, and we've really enjoyed using the platform. So it's great to get to talk about sort of the ins and outs of what we've been doing with it. I'm trying to, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you today about a project that we have underway right now. We're about to start construct. We've just started construction. This project is in northern Utah. It's about 20 minutes north of Salt Lake City. It is a relatively affluent suburb, sort of bedroom community with a lot of commuters. It is US Highway 89, and it is also referred to as the Mountain Road. This area used to be a lot of orchards and sort of farm community. And as you can see from the photo, it's pretty well developed with pretty large homes, large lots, lots of trees. This project has been underway in some regard or another for nearly 30 years, with the DOT clearing a couple of different environmental studies over that time, and then also doing sort of willing seller property acquisition and corridor preservation. But no one ever thought it was coming, right? It was one of those projects where people just kept expecting it would get pushed off or delayed until it wasn't anymore. So the state began a state environmental study in 2017, and our team was brought on. There was a different public involvement team associated with the first phase of the environmental study. And they brought in a different team at the end of the environmental study before design began. I'm not entirely sure about the motivation behind why that happened, but let's see. the project really began, the project team really began to get a lot of questions and concerns about road heights and other things. So the scope of this project is to expand Highway 89 to 3 lanes in each direction and build at-grade crossings. So you can see in the photo here, we have, sorry, at-grade crossings, grade-separated crossings. So in the end, we'll be building 4 interchanges and 2 bridges, as well as reconstructing the highway and adding a lane in each direction. So as we came into the design phase, we realized there was a lot of controversy around the folks who lived close to the highway. People who are commuters who drive it every day that don't live within about a half a mile of the project. We did some early polling. We had like an 88% approval rating. People were ready for us to build it. But with a 9-mile corridor and 6 interchanges and all of these things, people had a lot of questions. So we implemented public input to supplement our in-person open house that we had planned. So we built this site. You can see our project manager there looking very uncomfortable. We asked him to, we created a sort of an introductory video. We had over 200 properties where we needed some form of acquisition, whether that was a total take of the full property or just a strip take or even just a construction easement. We literally had several hundred parcels of acquisition to achieve. And we wanted to push out a lot of information, but we also wanted people to know that because this is a progressive design build project, we wanted them to know that the designs were not final, that we were still here and available to coordinate and talk to people. So in this video, our project director, Mike Romero, explains that if people think that they are impacted by the project as a property owner, that we want them to come to the in-person meeting or reach out to our team, but that there's also a lot of information on the site. One of the things we did with the site was we, instead of using computer generated renderings of the project features, we used hand-drawn architectural renderings. The point there was to sort of enforce the fact that we were in design, we had not made final decisions. And we did that intentionally because there was a lot of pushback between the environmental phase and the design phase. A lawsuit was launched against the state that had the potential to delay the project. And with design build, that's always, we're already trying to work on an accelerated schedule. So a lot of what we were doing with public input here was trying to share a lot of information in a cohesive way, in a clear and understandable way, but also to be as transparent as possible in the face of that lawsuit. So we launched this online open house about a week before the in-person open house. We had 600 people come to the open house. We had 7,000 online open house site visits. We had about 100 comments. In the video, Mike also says, you can leave a comment here. We may or may not be able to respond to them in real time. So if you have a comment that's urgent, feel free to call the team. So we did do some comment management, but that allowed us to, we were a little bit concerned about how much engagement versus capacity we'd be able to have to really answer those questions online. And I think that it was probably a good thing. At the open house, we had 45 team members trying to respond to the 600 plus attendees, and we had people getting frustrated because they couldn't speak to a person in time. So although we heard that the online open house was great, a lot of people said they did not come to the in-person meeting because they got the information they needed online. We were still trying to balance that response time need. So let's see what else. One of the great things about this that we've been working on with public input is the data management on the back end. So with the Utah DOT, all of the public engagement consultants are required to maintain a full database of any interaction that we have with the public. So every phone call, every email, every personal visit gets logged. And we've got a bunch of different CRMs and different ways to manage this. It literally used to be in an Excel spreadsheet. And now we're working through a lot of different advancements. This is one of them that we've been working with public input to build out. You can see here that we can see name, email, address, whatever information they give us about their location. And then my team will manually enter some of that data, where on, let's see if the next slide will go. In other places with the online open house or something, it will directly drop a pin and let us know where they are. This is helpful for a number of reasons. One, I think, is just so that you have some context as the public engagement team. So on my team, we have 6 different people working on this team in different capacities for the communications side. So we have media folks, a social media manager, 2 folks who manage sort of the in-person, myself, and then a deputy team lead. And so any one of us could interface with a stakeholder. So it's great to be able to go in, click the dot, and see, oh yeah, Aubrey's talked to Brandon, Chris has talked to Brandon, right? We can see sort of the context of what kinds of correspondence we've had with this person. It helps us know what we're getting into. It also helps make sure we don't contradict ourselves. And the other sort of obvious benefit of having this type of database is, in the event of litigation, there is firm, solid documentation that shows what we did or did not do. Having been deposed and having in a lawsuit related to a project years ago, I had to refer back to a 3-year-old Excel spreadsheet, which has slightly less credibility, than something that is digital and can be tagged with time codes and date stamps and other things. So this is really a benefit that I think, let me go back, that I think we're working on building out. And I don't know, Hunter or Graham, if you wanted to add anything about public input building this out, but this is a tool that we really like. Also, I would just add that my UDOT project manager and leadership really like to see this. They can see who we're talking to, where they're coming from, sort of what the heat map is on different sentiments and other things. And that helps them understand sort of what's anecdotal, what's experiential, and what's actually happening in the field.
Yeah, thank you, Leah. And I think that the only thing we would add to that is the best practice that you guys are really applying in building out that database. There's a lot of applications from what you had said with regards to depositions and the ability to go back and see participation from individuals, and then of course how they are could be looked at from a geographic perspective or even a demographic perspective. But the bigger picture for us is the ability to take all those different types of communication, the different types of public involvement tactics, and consolidate them with every effort, every different interaction that people take, whether they're at a public meeting or whether it's an online open house or social media interactions, and have that build that public participation database so that we're all kind of rowing the boat together. But I do really appreciate your time, Leah, and again, watching and learning from your experience as well. I'd be remiss not to say that as software developers, at the core, we listen more than we think for ourselves, and a lot of the things that we've built are as a result of the people who have been working on these projects over the last 7-8 years that this has been going, and honestly just trying to solve those problems. And again, with some of the wrapping up thoughts as we get to, there was a couple of questions that come in. I think I want to just reiterate the need for, regardless of the tools you use, regardless of the tactics that are specific to those projects, the need to consolidate your data standards. We want to talk about the ability to share this information across personnel and staff, across departments, and then across agencies. And that's where we are really excited to continue working on our end, the ability to not just create a database where one agency, for example, on this slide, our friends Campo down the street in Raleigh and the North Carolina DOT sharing their efforts, but even down to the municipal level. You know, every aspect of this process, you know, can be streamlined if we all work together. And so sharing this information across those agency lines by standardizing the process, by coordinating with your neighbors, is really how we can accelerate that process. But with that said, I do want to take some time for questions. We did get one. I think it's, you know, guided towards Diane. If you want to answer this one that came in on the chat, is the level of sort of time and staff to respond to such large public comments like you had mentioned. Is that something, Diane, you can speak to for a minute or so?
I could. When we're dealing with the emails, of course, we do give a personalized response. We also give a response when someone signs up for an email. When they subscribe to the list, we send them a note and say, thank you for signing up to receive email updates on this project. And when it comes to all of those responses and comments that we received via the questions we ask online, it did take a little bit of time. I spent probably 2 full days reading comments and providing tags. And our consulting team had 2 people that worked on it for several days as well to make sure that we didn't miss any tags, we didn't find anything that needed an ultimate response. But it was so much easier because, quite honestly, there's a little sheet, if you will, in there. You can go in when you look at comments and do a search. And so if after you've read 3 or 4, you know, or a dozen comments, you find that there are certain things people seem to be very interested in. And in the case of this one, Indigo Farms is an all-natural organic farm. They have animals and products. And so we could search. Did anybody mention Indigo Farms? And if we did, multiple tag them, you know, tag all of those at once with Indigo Farms. Did we have people talking about the Sunset Beach option, which was something proposed by the Sunset Beach Council? Tag them with those. It really reduced the amount of time that we had to spend really digging down into comments because those were the hot topics.
Right. And so, yeah, unifying that approach, bringing everything into one platform and making sure that you're efficient with your responses. That's perfect. But it is 12:01, and I know that everybody's got the next engagement, the next meeting to go to. So we do really appreciate the time and the energy from our presenters, and of course everyone who joined us here today. Feel free to hang around. There is a question that came in privately that is a little bit more interesting that I think Radha could answer. But if anybody wants to stick around and hear that one, feel free. If not, thank you so much for joining us. That last question, Radha and Logan, you know, talk about some of the perception of a toll road and how you might have been able to turn, you know, some negative public perception of a previous North Carolina toll effort into such positive response for your current one.
Sure, Graham. I'll share a couple of thoughts, and Logan, please jump into. Diane, you may have a different perspective from all the other things that you're doing in the background, so please jump in if you want to add any thoughts. So the first takeaway, especially for me, was going back to what Graham said, often and early. So unlike some other projects we worked on, we really tried to promote and educate project information through a lot of small group meetings. I don't even have a count of how many neighborhood associations, community organizations, town councils that we went and presented. There were a couple of other officials from the Turnpike Authority that made a majority of those presentations. So we worked with them in scheduling those meetings and gathering the information and presenting the information. So that really helped us to have the project in public's mind continuously, even during the time when the project was on hold. That type of outreach did not stop. So that really helped us for everybody to kind of remember that this is not something suddenly somebody is coming up and tolling a facility. This is the same project that has been being planned and discussed for a few years. And at the end, when we came back and started having the large public meeting, it really helped for public to remember all those background meetings as they were really giving the final feedback.
Yeah, and the only thing.
Rob,
Oh, go ahead, Diane.
oh, I was just going to say, you know, to both of you guys that, you know, this was one of the first projects that we used public input on. And I think by having those small group meetings, although they're outside of what we're talking about kind of today, part of that was you were able to glean questions and concepts and misconceptions and put those into those frequently asked questions with the correct answers. And I think that's why, you know, unlike Carolina Bays, where we had a tremendous number of people come out because they didn't know, they would just believed what they were being told, and you were able to get that information out there in the FAQs, and not to say that it cut down on the number of people coming to meetings, but I think it did help with that because they had those answers they already needed, and they were right there online.
It's a good point, Diane. Thank you. Logan, you want to add anything else?
No, I'm good. Yeah, I think you guys covered it.
All right. Well, thanks to you guys for taking a few extra minutes to cover that one. I think it was important to get to, and we're looking forward to the next opportunity to share notes and opportunities for best practices among peers. In the meantime, hopefully everybody enjoys their weekend, the remainder of their slightly longer February, and we will all talk again soon. Thanks so much again.